Hey, welcome. Let's talk about the comparison trap. Some mornings I would open my laptop and already feel slightly behind. Nothing has gone wrong yet, but the day hasn't even started. But somewhere in the background, there's a quiet calculation that's already running. Someone out there is moving faster. Someone has already begun and done the thing that I'm even thinking about doing. You open social media for a minute and the evidence is immediate. A founder announces a funding round. A friend posts a marathon medal. A writer publishes the book that you've been meaning to start for 3 years. And the mind reacts instantly, doesn't it? They're ahead. And it sounds harmless, but it's just an observation. But it doesn't stay an observation for long, does it? Because the next question shows up almost automatically. If they're ahead, then where does that leave me? You usually feel the answer before you hear it. Your chest tightens a little, your mood shifts, and you suddenly feel like you should probably get moving. Do more, work harder, catch up. And most people think the emotion here is envy, but it usually isn't. What you're feeling is closer to something biological. Your brain is just registering a change in rank. Human beings constantly measure themselves against other people, and psychologists have studied this for decades. Back in the 1950s, a psychologist named Leon Festinger described something called social comparison theory, and his basic observation was simple. When people don't have a clear objective measure of how they're doing, they compare themselves to others. We do it with careers, fitness, money, relationships, and parenting, almost anything. We scan sideways to figure out where we stand. And that instinct made perfect sense for most of human history. You lived in a small tribe and your status dropped. It mattered. Higher status meant influence, protection, better access to resources. Your nervous system evolved to notice the changes in the hierarchy because survival sometimes depends on it. So the brain got very good at detecting rank shifts. And the mechanism is ancient, but the environment is brand new. For most of our history, you compared yourself maybe with 30 or 40 different people, but now you compare yourself with millions. Athletes on Instagram, founders on podcasts, writers posting screenshots of book sales, investors celebrating trades. And your brain interprets each one in the same way. Someone is performing well. The hierarchy moves. And your nervous system reacts. And this loop runs quietly in the background all day. You notice excellence. Your brain translates that into rank. Your body produces an emotional response. Sometimes that response pushes you forward. Sometimes it knocks the wind out of you. And it often does both. And here's the strange part. The mechanism itself isn't the problem. In some situations, it works beautifully. Comparison can accelerate growth. A runner who trains with faster runners improves faster. A young entrepreneur studying successful companies starts to understand what's possible. And a writer reading brilliant work raises their own standards. And in those moments, comparison acts like a measuring instrument. It shows distance where you are and where you could be. And the discomfort actually contains useful information. A friend finishes an Ironman and you suddenly feel restless. Maybe health matters to you more than you're actually acting like it does. A colleague launches a company and you feel unsettled. Maybe autonomy matters more than security. Someone publishes a book and you feel quiet irritation under the admiration. Maybe writing is something you care about deeply. So comparison reveals values. It exposes what matters. And that's why the belief underneath comparison survives. Beliefs that do nothing for us disappear quickly. Beliefs that produce results tend to stay. So comparison pushes people to train harder, read more, improve faster. Plenty of people quietly credit comparison for their development. But something changes when the belief underneath comparison shifts. At some point, the mind quietly adds another rule: they're ahead, which turns into, I need to catch them. And then eventually, something stronger appears. If I don't outperform them, something about me is less. You rarely hear that belief as a clear sentence. It operates more like a contract in the background. Worth equals rank, and rank equals performance. Psychologists studying perfectionism calls this performance-based self-worth. Your sense of value rises and falls depending on the achievement, the approval, or status. And once that rule takes hold, life starts to feel like a scoreboard. When you win, you feel relief. When you lose, you feel shame. And nothing stabilizes. Step back from that logic for a second. Like, only one person can be number one. And if your worth depends on outrunning everyone else, almost everyone has to feel inferior most of the time. Even the person in first place knows someone is coming for them. And that belief guarantees emotional volatility. It also creates a double standard. Imagine saying out loud to someone that you really care about, like a friend tells you that they're discouraged because a colleague is doing better. And you respond calmly, yes, they're ahead of you and that means you're worth less. You would never say that sentence. But many people apply that exact rule to themselves every single day. And that's what psychologists call a cognitive distortion, where the mind takes a neutral observation, someone else performing well, and turns that into a verdict about your own value. The comparison is just data. The distortion is the meaning attached to it. You can usually tell when the comparison loop takes over. Like other people's success ruins your mood. You struggle to enjoy progress because someone else is moving faster. And rest feels uncomfortable because someone somewhere might be working. Your attention keeps drifting back to what everyone else is doing. And suddenly your nervous system is reacting to information that you just can't control. The scoreboard has moved outside you, and anyone can move it. Anyone. The shift that stabilizes this system is surprisingly simple. Change the scoreboard. Instead of comparing yourself with other people, compare yourself with your past. People have said this. Who were you 5 years ago? What could that version of you handle? What did they understand about the world at the time? When the reference point moves from other people to your own timeline, then something stabilizes. Growth becomes visible. You see the skills that you've built and the problems that you can now solve, the situations that you can handle. Progress still motivates you, but the volatility disappears. You still notice excellence in others, and you can still admire doing remarkable things. Their movement just stops meaning something about you, and they become information, not judgment. So this shift doesn't guarantee success, and it doesn't provide wealth or recognition, but it removes one distortion, the idea that someone else's progress determines your worth. And when that belief loosens its grip, something interesting happens. Energy returns. The energy that used to be spent on scanning the horizon for competitors. Energy can now go somewhere useful, forward. Here's a small experiment that you can run today. The next time the comparison shows up, and when the mind says someone is ahead, just pause and ask yourself a different question. Like, what value is this reaction pointing to? Then ask one more. What would it look like to move one step closer to that value today? The comparison loop probably won't disappear. And the human brain is probably wired this way. But once you understand the mechanism, then you stop treating it like a verdict. And when that happens, the race against strangers fades into the background, leaving you with something a bit more interesting, your own path. Best to you. See you in the next one. Chris out.